3 hours ago, I wasn't listening to any of that. I was in Asda, and I was watching as the staff started to clear the shelves of all of the coronation bunting, paper plates, and T-shirts that had been left unsold for weeks. It has never been clearer to me that the days of the monarchy in Scotland are numbered. We see titles and earlships being passed around like presents. Prince Andrew was made Earl of Inverness on his wedding day. He has no interest in Inverness at all. And the same could be said of Prince Edward. Who is this stranger to now claim that he is the Duke of Edinburgh? The monarchy is incapable of modernising. The monarchy, for years, hasn't been able to change, and this new king won't bring about anything. And I'm going to check my notes. It's an archaic system that belongs in the past. And Scotland both deserves and demands an elected head of state that is accountable to the people. Thank you. So we've done this throughout our history. From the Declaration of Arbroath in 1320 to the claim of right in the late 1600s to the renewal of that claim of right 34 years ago as civic and political leaders across Scotland renewed it. Our political tradition in Scotland is based on a mandate that is given by the people. It's the monarchy that is leaving that tradition behind, and so it is on all of us to leave them behind with it. The monarchy don't see the people as citizens to lead. They see them as subjects to rule. 160 laws. That is the number of laws that the royals have used their privilege to be exempt from. We deserve better than this. All of Scotland does. They don't believe in equality under law. They believe the law only applies to people who sit beneath them. That's why I joined Our Republic, who are hosting this rally today. Our Republic is a campaign that champions and gives voice to the simple notion that Scotland should have a fully functional elected head of state who is accountable to the people and who can represent Scotland and our democracy. And with that, I am proud to say that my time's up. We have a fantastic line of speakers today, and I would love to introduce our first speaker, Tommy Shepherd, SNP MP for Edinburgh East and lifelong supporter of a Scottish Republic. Thanks, Tommy.
Thanks, Connor. You're looking good, Edinburgh. 9 months ago, we were here on this hill to celebrate, if that's the right word, the 70th anniversary of Her late Majesty's reign on the throne at the Jubilee. And there were about 100 to 150 of us at that time. And today, there's already 10 times that number here today. And I think when you contrast that with the pictures we've seen of what's been happening in Princess Street Gardens, I think we know which of these events speak for the majority of people in this city and in this country, as it is us. But I want to begin not in Scotland, but in London. Many of the people here, I can see some well-kept faces around, share my ambition for Scotland to become a self-governing country. But understand this, we want to become independent, not to separate ourselves from anyone, but to have the political capacity to play our role on these islands and in this country. And therefore, the first thing I would like to do from this rally today is for us to send a message of solidarity to those brave protesters who were arrested and detained and prevented from making a political, peaceful protest on the streets of I know and work with Graham Smith and his colleagues in the Republic organisation, and I can testify that they are people of integrity and that they had no intent whatsoever to engage in any violent disruption, but wanted to make a peaceful democratic protest. The fact that they have been prevented from doing so should shame everyone in the British government. The truth is that even in England, a Republican point of view is shared by up to a third of the population. It is not an outrageous minority pursuit. It is a mainstream opinion in the land of Thomas Paine and many other reformers. And it is therefore, it is ridiculous that these people who are the dissidents of today in the United Kingdom are now being treated by our government in the same way that the Russian government treats the dissidents in Moscow. And you cannot have it both ways. You cannot condemn that repression and intimidation and thwarting of democratic protest in Russia and say that it's okay to do it on the streets of London. It is not, and our solidarity goes with them. The next thing to say is just to be clear that we represent mainstream opinion in this country. The recent polls that have come out show that amongst the Scottish population as a whole, opinion is pretty much even between those who want to abolish the monarchy and those who want it to continue. But if you look at the opinion of people under 35, there is a clear and compelling majority against the monarchy and for an elected head of state. That is the coming view. That is what we represent, and we should do it proudly. Now, people sometimes say to me when I go on about the lavish excesses and wasteful expenditure of the monarchy that I'm just jealous of our class system, that, we're motivated by jealousy. We are not motivated by jealousy. We are motivated by a desire for justice. We think that that inequality is wrong. We think it is wrong to have a system based in the feudal hierarchies of medieval times that governs how we conduct ourselves in the 21st century. And we think it is wrong and distasteful for that amount of money to be spent with their gold orbs and gold chariots celebrating an unelected hierarchy when at the same time millions of his subjects cannot afford to pay their bills and their children go to bed hungry at night. What sort of kingdom is that? And they go on and they say, oh, they bring in lots of money into the economy. Think of all of the people who come to visit the royal castles and the royal sites. Yes, a lot of people come to visit Windsor Castle, Buckingham Palace, with the few rooms that they're allowed into. Yes, they come to see those things, but they come to appreciate the architecture, the history, the cultural position, to look at the buildings. They don't come to celebrate the occupants of those buildings. And it's worth noting that the most visited royal palace in the whole of the world is the Palace of Versailles in France. And it's been a long time since there was a royal in residence there. So I'm very proud and pleased and privileged to speak at this rally today and to be one of a number of speakers that are going to come up to you. I say to you this, that we are going to later be reading out the Declaration of Calton Hill. Some of you will have seen it already published in the press. More than 3,000 people have signed this declaration. And it's a declaration that says we want to have the political power to elect our own leaders and hold them to account, but we want to do that for a reason. It's not power for power's sake. It's power to change our lives, to change our world, so that the richness of this wonderful country in which we live becomes a common treasury for all of the people and is not expropriated by the rich and by international corporations. It expresses a desire for an inclusive country where everyone is respected, for a democratic country where we get the right to make the rules by which we are governed and to remove those who are responsible for them. And for an equal country where people share what we have and where nobody goes to bed hungry. Nobody sits wondering how they pay their electricity bill while they look at the wind turbines out their own window, which is generating that electricity in the first place and making obscene profits for the generating companies. That is the type of Scotland we would like to have. And we need to say, even though there will be people not yet convinced of this argument, there will be people who will be happy and content to accept an independent Scotland within the Commonwealth with the King as the head of state, and I will work with them on the road to our independence. But I say this, the compelling logic at the end of the day is that if we take the power to control our own country and to build a new country and play a role in this world which is progressive and ambitious, then it makes no sense to retain a feudal hierarchy at the top of that constitution. So therefore, ultimately, while the two things don't completely overlap, the campaign for an independent Scotland and the campaign for a Scottish Republic will eventually become the same thing. And I am so pleased today at the size of this rally, the confidence of this rally. I'm pleased that actually throughout this city, this weekend's coronation has been something of a damp squib. I have not seen any Union Jackery flying from the houses. I have not seen any manifestation of this. So we are the majority, and we must take confidence now. We must take confidence in our own ability to change and our own ability to win this argument. Today, the day of the coronation of King Charles III, is peak royalty. It gets harder for them as every day progresses, and as every day progresses, more and more people will come to our point of view and see the compelling and rational arguments that we are making. So take heart. Remember to tell your children where you were on the 6th of May 2023, because this is the start of something really big, and I look forward to going on that journey with you.
Thank you very much, Tommy, for a powerful start to our lineup of speakers. Can I just say before we continue, if you are a speaker, could you make your way to the left-hand side of the stage and make yourself known? It really helps us. But next up, I would love to introduce Maggie Chapman, Green MSP for North East Scotland. Thank you, Maggie.
Hello, Edinburgh. Just going to break the microphone. It's a great pleasure to be here today in Scotland's capital city, and what I hope will soon be the capital city of an independent socialist republic of Scotland. I bring you greetings from Dundee. I was at the May Day march and celebrations this morning, and we were unequivocal on the streets of Dundee that the power of the people should rest with the people, not with the pomp and pageantry that is happening in London just now. And I think it is important to note that there are May Day celebrations happening across Scotland today, because May Day, of course, represents the power of people, the power of workers to take control, the power of workers to win rights for themselves, for their families, and for their colleagues and comrades at work. That is why we are able to be here on a Saturday. Trade unions and workers gave us the weekend. And so as we remember May Day, celebrated in Scotland this weekend and last weekend, I think we bring with us solidarity and unity from workers across the country. Because our struggle today is one that shares many common elements of the struggle that workers have been through. A struggle often in direct conflict with the forces behind inherited wealth and inherited privilege. Struggles in a conflict against that pomp, pageantry and power on display down south. So I want to say unequivocally and very, very clearly, Charles is not my king. He will never be my king. The monarchy exists in large part to make people feel that wealth is only available to those who are elite, those who are born into it. A few of us may get some if we're lucky and play by the rules and work hard enough. But that is not the message that we are sending to our colleagues and comrades across Scotland today. We are saying that wealth is for all. It should be and must be shared. I am a Republican. I am a proud Republican, and I am a Democrat, and a proud Democrat. I believe that we should elect our leaders. Leaders should not come from positions of power and privilege and wealth only. Leaders cannot and must not be born into it. Leaders should make that decision to choose and should then be held accountable, responsible to those who elect them to serve them. Hereditary titles, King, Queen, Lord, Earl, have no place at all in a democracy, never mind a 21st century democracy. We do want power. We do want power, but we want it for everyone. We want to empower our neighbourhoods. We want to empower our communities. We want to empower the workers, those who live next to us, those who we go shopping with, those who we play with. We want to empower everyone in Scotland, not just those who have millions worth of jewels resting on their heads. And when I say we want power for everybody, I include those who currently are at risk of having their lives torn apart because of the excesses of this cruel and racist British state. Everybody who wants to live in Scotland, who chooses to make Scotland their home, is welcome here. Refugees are welcome here. It is only by standing up for these principles, for the principles that we all share, for the principles that stand against the elite, against power for the powerful, against power just because you happen to be born into it. That is what we will get if we stand together for a democratic, socialist, Republican Scotland. I want to end with a quote from a Republican who I'm sure many of you will be familiar with, James Connolly. He wrote this on a previous king. We will not blame him for the crimes of his ancestors if he relents the royal rights of his ancestors. But as long as he claims their rights by virtue of descent, then by virtue of descent, he must shoulder the responsibilities of his crimes and their crimes. And one last thing. I am sure, like many of you, as I was making my way up Calton Hill today, I could hear the sounds coming from Hibs just on Easter Road. And I'm pretty sure they were singing, "You can shove your coronation up your arse." Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maggie, for that. Before I invite on our next speaker, I want to give a shout out to a man that I met just before we started. He is 9 months away from 90 years old, and he's made his way all the way up Calton Hill today with a cane, Neil Shaw. So thank you very much for coming out today, Neil. Next speaker, we have Lorna Slater, MSP for the Lothians.
It's just on, I think.
Hello. Oh, yeah, here we go. Brilliant. That was good. Well done, Maggie, for starting the song there. That was fantastic. And this is definitely the place to be. I have it on good reports that in Princess Street Gardens, they're all a bit subdued. This is clearly where the action is. I mean, it is a bit obscene to be watching £100 million worth of horses, carriages, jewels, and wild costumes when something like 1 in 4 families in the UK is struggling to feed their kids. It is simply obscene. I know that many people who defend the monarchy imagine them as some sort of quaint anachronism. Oh, aren't the costumes fun? It's a bit like something, it looks like something out of a Game of Thrones set. But it isn't a quaint anachronism. It is an active distortion of our democracy. For the first point, vast wealth is always a distortion of democracy. While we maintain the principle of one person, one vote, vast wealth has the ability to distort where power lies. And when we have one family who can inherit that vast wealth without paying inheritance taxes, without paying the taxes that every single one of us would have to pay to contribute to our public services, that exceptionalism of one family, that is not harmless. Not only does the king get earlier insight into all legislation that is passed in Scotland, but he has a direct channel to lobby for changes to that legislation. And as a government minister, I am not able to either confirm or deny that the king has lobbied me or my officials for change to that legislation. That is not a harmless anachronism. That is a twisting of unaccountable power and wealth that is being handed down in one particular family to rule over us. But what comes down to the fundamental question, are we the subjects of a sovereign? Do we do his will? Or are the people sovereign? And does our government serve us? When I was elected to the Scottish Parliament, myself and all members of the Scottish Parliament have to swear an oath to the king and his heirs and successors. I did so under protest, as did many of my colleagues. It is so bizarre that in a democracy, I, who am voted by the people, chosen by the people to represent your interests and your values, have to then swear my allegiance to an unelected head of state. That is not a democracy. For me, one of the exciting things about working towards an independent Scotland is the fact that we will have the opportunity to create our own written constitution. Constitutions are enduring documents. They endure for generations, sometimes for centuries. We will have a chance to have that conversation about what kind of country we want to be. And in that written constitution, I hope that we will clearly state that Scotland is a republic, that our head of state and all of our governance will be elected. The inequality that is represented by the monarchy is a fundamental bit of social injustice. But some people say to me, oh, but Charles, he's quite good on the environment. Nobody who travels around by private jet has anything credible to say on climate change. For the Scottish Greens, we say that there is no social justice without climate justice, no climate justice without social justice. There are no kings on a dead planet. So when it comes to the monarchy, Scotland says no. Let's do better. Let's build a better, brighter, democratic future in an independent Scottish Republic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lorna. Next speaker we have is George Gunn, all the way from Thurso, and an extremely early morning drive down. George, please join me.
What kind? I don't have an.
Hello, I'm not a politician. I'm a poet.
I don't think my phone is good enough for it.
So I'm going to give you a poem, an ode to the Scottish Republic here on this historic day. My allegiance is to the Scottish people, to all people, to be called a British subject and to swear allegiance to a king while my country has no place among nations is to be a ghost and to bear disgrace. It is the disposition of all citizens of our future republic. To see the number of the poor increase, while 100 million and more is spent to put a crown on a coof, is to shame our democracy. To see her discarded in the gutter, in a coat of rags, her feet in rillans. Hame, 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 hame would I be. Hame, hame, hame in my ain country, with the birk and the pine and the bonny rowan tree, bloomin' fair in my ain country. The Lord of Misrule in the summer tents ponders momentarily current events, stealing our destiny as he steals our rents. But no more, no more. For the King will see our republic rising up out of the ground, seeking a new simplicity. The Republican wind blows through the Liberty Tree. No king can escape the coming melee. Hame, 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 hame would I be. Hame, hame, hame in my ain country, when the new moon will be born on the carrying stream, so that we may be the republic of the people's desire. We make the song, we catch the fire, free of tyranny. I can taste the sweet salt of freedom on my tongue. As we gather here to proclaim that which is obvious to the young, let us change our elegy into hymn. Remake it all. Let us not fail again in our own country. And for the love of our people, let us make our Scottish Republic and make it strong. Thank you very much, George. Powerful words and a great poem. Next up, we have Councillor Rosa Salee, SNP Glasgow Councillor for Greater Pollok and co-founder of asylum rights group Glasgow Girls.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. And I am a councillor for Glasgow, but I started off as a campaigner, and today we are campaigning here for change for Scotland, for a Republican, socialist, independent country of Scotland. We all agree here that the monarchy is out of date and is out of touch with the people. I talk to the young people every day, and I help constituents in my ward on a daily basis. And many people don't agree with the monarchy. They don't relate with the monarchy. So why do we have a monarchy of head of state? A head of state that is not elected by the people. We should be outraged, we should be angry, we should be frustrated that today a coronation ceremony has been organized. Millions of our tax money is being spent for what? For a king that does not represent us. If we believe in a fair society, then we should abolish the monarchy. a high number of people living in poverty. We have a cost of living crisis have affected most families that cannot provide food or pay their bills. It makes me angry to see the struggle of families. Now we have been forced for people to use food banks to survive. What kind of country is that? The monarchy does not understand the lives of ordinary people that work hard every day to provide for families. Instead of doing something, we are having a coronation ceremony of mumbo jumbo and make believe of people that they are ahead of state. This is not a medieval time. This is 21st century. Time has moved on and we want a different kind of a political system where the head of state is elected by the people. We deserve to have a say and our voice are being heard. Today we are making a difference to come to this protest and be heard. We are in a class war. We see people at the top making a fortune while working class people are unable to make a living. Is that the world we want to see? No. There's one rule for them and another for us. The monarchy is not legal and boundaries. The law is not applying to them. For example, the inheritance tax. Why do they not have to pay, but ordinary people have to pay? Why the monarchy is getting involved in political decision and then deciding that they're not? Don't fool the people. The people know what's the truth. Our country needs to build a new system that delivers justice and equality for all. A vision for a radical independence that puts Republican views at the center of its movement. Many countries like France, Italy, Russia, Portugal, Greece, and many have abolished the monarchy, and we can do so as well. This is not our king. Yes, I think you said it very well in the back. This is not our king, and it's time to abolish the monarchy. We can make our own history, a social republic in Scotland. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rosa.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that's a very good point. I'm doing this.
I'm going to let these continue to go on, by the way. I'm just here to manage it. Right, okay, thank you very much, Rosa. Next speaker, we have Councillor Ross Mackenzie, Independent Edinburgh Councillor for Sighthill and Gorgie. Thank you, Ross.
Deal that. I'll have a wee chat with this guy here. You might also want that.
Well, this is fantastic. It feels like a lot of people here are getting a chance to say things that maybe they didn't feel they were allowed to say or didn't feel comfortable saying. But I feel like we've been here before. 19 years ago, I was here, exactly here, for a Republican rally on the day that Queen Elizabeth attended the official opening of the Scottish Parliament. And there was a huge amount of radical energy around at that time. The hope that many people had felt when Labour came to power in 97 and when the Scottish Parliament was established in 99 had been completely extinguished following the invasion of Iraq and the realisation that Tony Blair and Gordon Brown were intent on continuing much of Thatcher's neoliberal agenda. But this might be a less popular message. Over the following decade, that radical energy was sucked into a mainstream independence movement that became increasingly nervous about challenging the British state head on. Republicanism was the first victim of Wheesht for Indy. And staying Wheesht didn't work. And it didn't work in Corbyn's Labour either, when accommodations there were made with the British state in order to make the prospect of a socialist government more palatable to the middle class. It was a waste of time. The British state just steamrollered over it. And it might be taking a wee bit longer, but they're increasingly confident that they can steamroll over the independence movement in the coming years. So that bit's all a bit depressing, but I think there is a lot of hope, not just from the number of people here, but I take a lot of hope from the fact that younger generations are a lot more radical than my generation. They're not going to wheeze for anything, whether it's calling out bigotry, standing up to landlords, or demanding better wages and conditions. So obviously, they're going to call out the absurdity of the monarchy, which exists as a powerful symbol of the hereditary wealth and power that is keeping them down, that is keeping all working class people down. And I also took some hope this week from the City of Edinburgh Council, which is not a place that often fills me with hope. But on Thursday, the Green Group brought a motion to full council which stated that the only legitimate representation of the people of Edinburgh is that which is democratic and accountable to them, and that therefore the title of the Duke of Edinburgh should hold no official status in the city and should be considered an illegitimate title. Not my words, and thanks to Councillor Ben Parker, who's here today, and Councillor Alice Mumford for bringing that motion to Council, because they took quite a lot of flack for it, and some of it was quite personal. And thanks also to the SNP group in the Council for supporting it in full, and that is a younger, more radical SNP group than we've had in the past in Edinburgh Council, and many of them are here today. Now, the motion was defeated narrowly simply because Republicans in the Labour Party and Republicans in the Democratic Party were whipped to oppose it. But there was no doubt on Thursday that there is a Republican majority in Edinburgh Council, just as I suspect there's a Republican majority down at Holyrood. It's just not quite spoken. And there's a huge Republican majority, as Tommy Shepherd was pointing out earlier, among our young people. So I think the fair conclusion to that is that the monarchy is toast, it's going, it's inevitable, it's finished, and most of us will live to see it gone. The big challenge we have is to make sure that the rest of the ruling class is brought down with it.
Thank you very much, Ross. Before I invite our next speaker up on stage, we've actually been sent a message from our Welsh counterparts who are marching today in Cardiff. They've asked me if I could read out a little something for you, so I will. The republic we are fighting for will be built on the principles of popular sovereignty and meeting people's basic needs. All power will be elected by and accountable to the people, and power will flow upwards from the grassroots rather than being imposed from above. This will ensure that power is always responsive to the needs and wishes of the people. The monarchs are a symbol for a brand named equality. Not electing our head of state normalises the idea that we do not elect our bosses or the CEOs of corporations or so many institutions that rule over our lives. That's why we say real democracy now. Just like you in Scotland, we in Wales want a country free from the monarchy, where people are equal and are not the subjects of an outdated institution. We want to create a modern Wales which recognises the diverse communities of our nation. We realise how it's played such a negative role on the world stage through its history of colonisation, riding roughshod over continents such as Asia and Africa, and still no apology or recognition of their responsibility follows. A family without accountability or ability to scrutinise is not what we deem democratic, and we want to take a different road. Campaigns for a republic are growing in former colonies such as Australia, especially among Indigenous people. In the Caribbean, countries such as Belize, the Bahamas, Jamaica and others plan to remove the king as their head of state. Barbados has already declared itself a republic. The tide is turning internationally, and Wales and Scotland need to have a national conversation about the monarchy too. From Wales to Scotland, together we stand, united in our goal of creating a better world. the world that is free, where every person is treated with respect, dignity and fairness. Let us break the chains that bind us and build a new society that empowers and values every individual. And I think it's safe to say that we wish the Welsh movement good luck in theirs. Next up, we have speaker Malini Chakrabarti, interdisciplinary artist and media researcher. Malini.
Hi everyone, I've never done this before, so this is my emotional support paper. I know what I'm going to say, but I'm going to, please don't mind. So good afternoon, and I would like to start my speech today with a story, of course, because I'm a storyteller, with a story called The Emperor's Clothes, and it was a tale by Hans Christian Andersen, first published in 1837, and it's honestly baffling just how relevant the story is to today. Now, the story begins with an emperor who's obsessed with his ego, his appearance, his clothes, and he spends all of his time and money on his wardrobe and cares only about, what his subjects think of him. Now, one day, two swindlers arrive in the emperor's city and claim to be master weavers who can create the most beautiful clothes in the world, but for only those who are wise and worthy of their beauty. And the emperor is quite intrigued and commissions these weavers to create a special set of clothes for him. And the weavers pretend to work on the clothes, but in reality, they are not weaving anything at all. And they ask the emperor and the ministers for more and more money, claiming that the materials they need are very expensive. Finally, the weavers announce that the emperor's new clothes are ready, and they pretend to hold up a robe and ask the emperor to try it on. And the emperor, unprepared to appear foolish or unworthy, gestures to be dressed in his new attire and speak in admiration of their work. His ministers and other officials, also afraid to appear foolish, of course go along with the charade and praise the emperor's new clothes. The emperor then decides to parade through the streets, and so that everybody can admire him, and obviously the gathered crowds who are aware of the words the swindler spoke believe that they see the beautiful clothes that only the wise and worthy people can see, and they marvel at his new clothes and start clapping for him, though in truth they can see that he's completely naked. Everyone except for one small child has the audacity to ask, "Emperor, where are your clothes?" And I feel that's all of us here today. Emperor, where are your clothes? And this story highlights the very truth about our society. Many are often prepared to pretend that things are the way we have been told. We do this, however, at the cost of truth, and enough is enough. This is particularly prevalent when it comes to issues of power, of inequality, and privilege. This may seem like a simple fairy tale, but clearly we know it's not. It reminds us to not trust the story we have read in our history books, but apply critical thought. It reminds us that we must not allow what we see before our own eyes to be clouded and altered, even if many around us are more than happy to do so. Now, I tell you the story today because it reminds me of the work I do. My name is Malini Chakrabarti, and I'm a decolonizer, a change maker, and an artist. And I work in museums, educational institutions, and hospitals to make sure that I can improve access to medical care and make it more equitable and inclusive. But I think it's a very important question to ask ourselves today. What does decolonization mean? Well, I have heard it put as such. Diversity asks, who is at the table? Equity responds, who is not at the table, and what barriers did they face to get at the table? Inclusion asks whether everybody's ideas are going to be heard, while justice asks, will their ideas be taken seriously if they are not part of the majority? Now, these are the 4 pillars, but all of them have one key aspect: whiteness and class. Decolonization is about asking, who built the table? Why was it built? And who is being excluded from that table? Decolonization is about recognizing the legacies of colonialism and institutions of imperial power and how they have shaped our society. Decolonization is working to dismantle these systems that perpetuate inequality, recognizing and working so that we can improve the very fabric and core of our society. And it's a shame that this has been continued for so long, that we are here in the 21st century having this discussion to begin with. Oh my God. But right, in doing so, in the decolonization work, we must acknowledge the harm that has been done to indigenous communities, to people of color, to many more marginalized groups throughout history. And it means acknowledging the role of colonialism and institutions of imperial power, of which, of course, the monarchy is the one notable pillar that had a huge impact in shaping the reality as it is today. Now, we must move forward from this. And moving forward means acknowledging it, learning from it, so that history doesn't get repeated, because we are focused in creating a new vision for the future, for this country that I have called my home, Scotland, centering justice, equity, equality, and human rights. Now, we live in a world that's becoming increasingly globalized, thank God for that, globalized, polarized, and unequal. The right to democracy is the right to freedom for the people and an investment for the future. If we have a future in the world stage, in the United Nations, in the world stage as Scotland, we must stop ignoring the gross 800-year wound that we have just been ignoring and letting it seep and just desecrate every part of our society. You know, on days like today, when we glorify colonizers, monarchy, when we glorify these colonizers, we fail to acknowledge the harm they did and the disrespect they caused to all the people they have disarmed, they have harmed and disenfranchised. Now, as an Indian woman, I am accurately aware of the harm that was done by the British Empire. I grew up in Calcutta, which was the British capital during the empire. Now, all of the atrocities that have been done were done in the name of the king and the queen and the country. And this is like 18th century and 19th century. I still can't believe this 21st century. But anyway, let's go on. The empire was built on the backs of millions of people who looked like me. And the wealth stolen from India alone amounts to 45 trillion pounds. Not to mention the genocide, which you can't put a price tag on. Before British rule, undivided India had a global GDP of 24%. 300 years later, that was reduced to 0.3. I don't even want to start calculating what Scotland's GDP is. Now, 76 years later, though some recovery has been made, we still feel the effects of it in our daily lives, in politics, international relations, even in the power of our passports. Now, much of this is about the past. And of course, we must acknowledge the ugly in the history that unfortunately is influencing the present. But let's not forget, all of us are here because we believe in the future. And my focus and my decolonization work is about the future, because trust me, as devastating as it is and as stupid as I sound, I'm an optimist. Now, I work to forge a world that is based on justice and equality, where human rights is at the forefront of all of our actions and decisions. And I think it's essential to create a society that is fair and just for all. But to achieve this, we start not only decolonizing the systems, but we start with us. We need to decolonize our minds. And what do I mean by decolonizing our minds? You see, the colonial mindset is based on individualism, where one's interests take priority over anybody else's. It's absolutely devoid of empathy. And it views nature and people as mere commodities to be owned and exploited for personal gain. And this kind of narrow-mindedness has led to destruction of natural resources and oppression of many communities worldwide. We must move beyond this perspective and adopt a different mindset, the decolonized mindset, which is community-led, community-focused, conscious, and the heart of it is empathy. We have to recognize, guys, that we are all connected. We have to recognize the interconnected between all things. This means that we are part of nature, and our actions have significant impact on not just nature, but ourselves, like on people. It's one planet, guys. You know, when I say namaste, right, it's a very common Hindu greeting. It means that my soul recognizes your soul, and I respect you. You've not done anything to deserve that. That's just radical indigenous hospitality. We need to make that normal. We must make empathy normal. Now, the very belief that one is born superior to another is the root cause of discrimination, and it's a curse to the spirit of humanity. The future of Scotland is humane. The future of Scotland is global. We can't go on the world stage while we don't even treat the global majority or any person of color or pre-colonized countries with disrespect. We have our spine strong enough to acknowledge what the history was because we are honest people. Now, we must prioritize empathy and actively seek to place ourselves in other people's shoes if we want to have a future. By doing so, we can break down the barriers and create a more inclusive and fair society. Now, I'm very grateful to be invited and listened to today. This is obviously a first, and I hope my words have emphasized just how crucial conversations like these are. I am the ancestor of the father of neo-humanism, M.N. Roy, Narendranath Bhattacharya, who was imprisoned for 8 years for fighting against British rule, under charges of conspiring to deprive the emperor of sovereignty in India. Now, I have inherited a legacy of justice and equality, and I want to end with a quote from a friend of my ancestors, Mahatma Gandhi, who said, "The true measure of any society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members." Let us consider these words in the light of this coronation taking place in a country where for the past 3 years, 14.4 million people live in poverty, 4.3 million children live in poverty. Let's join hands together and say, that is not my king. Namaste.
You guys really don't want me to speak at this point, which I'm fine with. Cool, thank you so much, Melanie, for that. I think that's an important message, particularly around kind of colonisation and Scotland's role in that, as well as, of course, the United Kingdom as a whole. Right now, I'm going to replace you. I'm Connor. I'm about to replace you with another Connor Beaton from the Radical Independence Campaign and the Socialist Republican Platform. There you are, Connor.
Can you hear me okay? Thank you very much for having me. That is a really tough speech to follow, to be honest. And I think it says a lot about why we're here today. I've come here from Dundee today. Dundee is a city with a fine radical history. It is the city that gave us the likes of George Mealmaker, who worked closely with some of Scotland's democratic martyrs who are remembered here on Calton Hill. And ultimately they were transported to Australia. Hopefully none of us will be. But I think we see echoes of that historic repression in the way that today Republicans have been arrested in London and Oxford and other places. Agreed? And we could see that this wasn't a surprise. The Metropolitan Police said they would do it, and they announced yesterday that they would not allow anyone to undermine this celebration. To which I have to ask, what are we meant to be celebrating? We're celebrating a country where last year 3 million people relied on food parcels from food banks. In the last year, 670,000 people used a food bank for the first time. It's a country in which wages have not risen in 15 years. And we found out now that workers are £11,000 a year less well off than they would have been otherwise. We've got the highest rate of inflation in any Western European country. This is a failed state, and Charles's coronation represents the absolute lack of democracy here. We need something quite different, and I consider it myself as an enormous privilege that today I get to read a document that I think some of you are already familiar with. It's called the Declaration of Calton Hill, and it's the latest in a series of documents by that name. And it says here, "We, the undersigned, declare our support for an independent Scottish Republic built on the inalienable principles of liberty, equality, diversity, and solidarity. We hold that this objective requires the dissolution of the UK state, which connects and subjugates Scotland to its hierarchical and anti-democratic institutions, and the creation of an elected Scottish government with full control of Scotland's national resources and revenues. We hold that sovereignty rests with the people and vow to resist those who wish to deny us the right to govern ourselves as we see fit. Self-determination is a fundamental right of the people of Scotland and not a privilege to be granted by the Crown. We advocate a written constitution guaranteeing the right of each of us to freely vote, speak and assemble, the right to privacy and protection, and access to information on all our government does in our name. We demand the power to refuse to send our citizens to unjust wars in other lands, to banish nuclear weapons of mass destruction from our land, to control the use of property or land by individuals, corporations or governments from out with Scotland's borders, to provide sanctuary in our country for those fleeing war, famine and persecution, to protect the natural ecology of Scotland, including our soil, seas and rivers, and ensure it benefits all people in perpetuity, and to build a more equal society free of poverty through the redistribution of our vast wealth. We oppose discrimination of any kind against any of our citizens and strive for each to fulfil their potential. We are a national civic movement which celebrates our diversity and resists national chauvinism, imperialism and racism. Our Scottish Republic will allow each of us dignity and self-respect, free from exploitation, assuming the responsibilities of free persons. Our Scottish Republic will be a bridge to the world, forging alliances as an equal partner with peoples across the globe to confront challenges faced by humanity. And we vow to continue the struggle for a free, democratic Scottish Republic until these objectives are won. That declaration has now been signed by over 3,000 people in the week since it was launched, and I invite all of you who have not yet put your names to it to sign it at caltonhill.scot. It's a declaration of intent, because this doesn't stop today, it continues. And it has to rely on us working together, not just here in Scotland, but with all of our friends across these islands. I was delighted to hear the message of solidarity from our friends in Wales, and I want to finish with a message of solidarity from some of our friends in Ireland. And it goes, "Today, the 1916 societies are coordinating a rally along the border highlighting, on the day of Charles Windsor's coronation, our opposition to monarchism in general and that of the British monarchy in particular. That feudal institution has been used and continues to be used wherever it runs to facilitate the denial of independence to peoples and countries. As the Edinburgh-born James Connolly once wrote, coronations and king's visits are by our astute, never-sleeping masters made into huge imperialist propaganda campaigns in favour of political and social schemes against democracy. So the 1916 Society sends solidarity greetings to our brothers and sisters in Scotland and wish every success to the Calton Hill Republican Rally as well as the Radical Independence Campaign. Ganiri and Tadliv. And I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Connor. We managed to make a full hour before it started raining. That's not too bad. Okay, next up we have Graham Campbell, who is the Councillor for Springburn, Rob Royston and Glasgow's first African Caribbean Councillor. Graham, welcome up on stage.
And I'm a bit too tall for this tent, so I'm going to have to get wet with all of yous. Firstly, this is going to be a bit of an audience participation thing, so I might call and respond to you a couple of times, right? So if I say, not our king, what are you going to say? What's that? What's that? I can't hear you! I heard that one. That's good. Right, I'm here on behalf of SNP Socialists, and I'm a member of the National Executive of the Scottish National Party, and I can't say I speak for that body, but I can say I speak for a significant minority of members of it who want a democratic, radical, independent, eco-socialist Scotland with an equal society for all. That's what we're fighting for, that's what we're trying to transform our party to do, and I'm very glad that in our recent struggles we won that course of action. Now, I want to say this, that clearly we have been going through some problems, but let's keep it positive today, because this today shows that the movement that we started really in 2012, you know, that broad anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, anti-racist, anti-war and pro-human rights campaign, the strands that we brought together back then are here represented today. And I say this, you cannot have national liberation, you cannot have black liberation, you cannot have women's liberation if you don't also have trans liberation. And as we say in the Black Lives Matter movement, when black people rise, when other oppressed minorities rise, we all rise, because together we are the majority of Scots. And we represent that. Now that's important to state that. And why is it important? Because I have the experience of Canada in 1995, Quebec's sovereignty referendum. And I can tell you, one of the key things I took away from living in Canada at that time was that the failure of the independents and sovereigntists to appeal to the minorities, particularly the ethnic minorities in Quebec, was the difference between them winning and losing their referendum. They lost by 0.5%. Few thousand. The Anglo-Canadians made a big song and dance about how anti-racist they were and how nationalist and exceptionalist and, you know, ethnocentric the Quebec sovereigntists were. And the Quebec sovereigntists failed to get their progressive social message across. Now, I'm very glad to say that here in Scotland, we're a bit different. We learned a bit from that. We have a broad, inclusive, democratic, radical, transforming movement for socialist independence, and that's represented right here on this hill. And all parts of that movement are crucial to it. I don't see how anybody can say that they are going to attack the Greens for being for the GRR or the SNP for being challenging the court decisions that defy the rules of the Scottish Parliament and the elected votes of those people represented. If you can attack those and think that that somehow helps the cause of independence, then you really are living in cloud cuckoo now. You have to defend the movements that support the thing you say you stand for. If you want independence in Scotland, you have to support the radical transformative movements, all strands of it. And I say, shout out to our anarchist friends on the hill, because they're saying something that we want to hear. Because unless capitalism is radically tackled and transformed, we will not be able to save this planet. That's a given. We cannot allow capitalism to continue as normal with fossil fuel destruction and imposed poverty and inequality. The monarchy absolutely represents that. We all know that. But down in England, the laws that they have is effectively, we've got this thing called lèse majesté, you know, insulting the king. Effectively, that's what we got in England now. And they tried to enforce that when the funeral happened. And all those people in Edinburgh who tried to make that point, not my king. They tried to wipe us off the street. Well, that was against the will of the people of Scotland. We didn't ask for that. That's nothing to do with what we are standing for here. We have the right to dissent, to be a democracy, to be citizens, not subjects. Now, I did promise some audience participation, right? So I'm going to say some things about Babylon must fall. Because when we talk about the apparatus and the state, what it stands for, the monarchy is not just a little decorative crown. It's a set of anti-democratic institutions which are designed to sweep away all of your rights. when you have an unwritten constitution, you don't have a constitution at all. That's the truth of it. We should have a constitution where those rights are codified in law, in writing. That's what we're here on the Hill to do, because the Calton Hill Declaration demands that we as citizens of Scotland demand these rights written, enshrined, in blood if necessary, but hopefully it won't come to that. But let's be clear, what that state is down south is a potentially fascist dictatorship. It is designed to remove your rights in an emergency situation. That Prime Minister, with his Henry VIII powers, can impose laws that you didn't vote for and policies that you rejected at the ballot box time and time again for decades and decades, all our lives. They can be imposed on you at will because of those Henry VIII powers, because of the monarchy's important role in cementing the fascist regime, as Johnny Rotten once called it. I wish he could remember that he used to be a punk. He's a punk of a different kind, unfortunately, right? But let's say this, right? Babylon must fall. The empires must fall. The oppression must come to the end. Liberation must come. Freedom must come. So when I say Babylon, 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 for an independent socialist republic of Scotland.
Thanks very much, Graham. Cheers. All right, thank you very much, Graham. Next up, we have David McClement, who is the host of the Hollywood Ungagged podcast. David.
Well, I'll try and keep it brief because there's been quite a lot of speakers and the weather does not look like it's going to be kind to us. It's Scotland, mate. Don't you worry about it. I know, I've been there. Almost 10 years ago, later this year, my stepfather passed away in the Clutha disaster. He was a lifelong socialist and a Republican, and he was a big influence on me. So it was one of the surreal aspects of that time when a huge bouquet of flowers arrived at my home from the then Prince Charles. But I knew what my stepfather Joe would want, and I thought about what he'd want me to do with them. So these flowers went straight in the bin. Some people would say that that's proof that he's a good man. I've also saw a lot of pictures online where I'm laughing and joking with Jimmy Savile, so that might prove he's a bad man. But the point is, it doesn't matter if he's a good man or a bad man, because we don't get to choose if he's our head of state. It doesn't matter if he was a bad husband to Diana or a good husband to Camilla, or if he's a good father to William or a bad father to Harry. And to be honest, if you care about that kind of family drama, I'd recommend Yellowstone rather than the House of Windsor. What matters is that we should get to choose our head of state. We don't need a head of state that lives in poverty, but one that knows what poverty is would be a start. Maybe we could choose a head of state that has worked for a living, at least one day in his life. And how about this? Let's put the bar really low. We could try and get a head of state that can at least put the toothpaste in his own toothbrush. Like I said, I'll keep it brief, so thanks very much.
Thanks, David. Appreciate that. All righty, folks. We have fired through all of our speakers so far, but we have one last one for you, and it is Niamh Brooke, who is a representative of the Scottish Socialist Party Youth. Niamh.
I think I'm also the shortest speaker up here today. Hello, I'm Niamh Brooke, and I'm the coordinator for the Stirling division of the Scottish Socialist Youth. I am here today thanks to a remarkable group of people who have shown me nothing but support and solidarity since I joined. And that solidarity is not only inspiring, it is necessary for our entire movement. It is the same reason we are all here today. The autonomy of Scotland and its people is threatened by a British establishment that will always see us as second. We cannot decide our own constitution. We cannot decide our own immigration laws. We cannot make our own equality legislation. We are in the depths of a housing crisis while our monarch spends £100 million on apartheid for himself. The people of Scotland deserve more. Even in our own government, the journey towards independence has stalled. We are no closer than we were 10 years ago. If anything, we have become less stable. The protections afforded by the SNP so far have been essential for an entire community of LGBT plus Scots. The change in leadership has highlighted just how tenuous that protection actually is. With Kate Forbes, an outspoken opponent of the Gender Recognition Act, as well as reproductive and trans rights, a front runner in our election, a future of an entire Scottish community hangs in the balance. The fact that such beliefs exist so openly within the party who lead our government is concerning. The fact that those beliefs lost by less than 10% of the vote is terrifying. For the first time in years, the Scottish government has had a blank slate. The election of a new leader means a new direction for the government and a new state of existence for its people. And already the buffer zones working group has been scrapped. And a vital protection that we were all promised goes with it. Already the promises we have been made and the freedoms that they entail are disintegrating. In a time of uncertainty, we cannot remain silent. We need a greater democratic system, one that makes sure that Scotland's people and our politics are not stuck in the past. We can protect our environment. We can facilitate public ownership of energy and transport for a cleaner, more efficient Scotland. We can create our own framework, one that protects our people, strengthens our position, and helps us look forward to a better, brighter future for all of us. And we are all here today because that is what we believe in. This is the time for us to make sure that meaningful change is made. This is the time for us to make our voices heard. The voice of the Scottish Republic, where all of our people are respected, protected, and valued. We are here to safeguard Scotland's future, one that can guarantee peace, justice, and equality for all. We will make sure that Scotland and its people have the right and the freedom to make our own future forever.
Thank you very much, Niamh. And I promise you this is the last thing you'll hear from me today. But I didn't get to join in the other ones. So, not my king! 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 Woo! Woo! Thank you very much for everyone who's joined us on Calton Hill today, and thank you very much to all of our wonderful speakers. There's been tons of interesting chats and conversations, so I really much do appreciate from everyone at our Republic. Thank you very much for turning out. I will say we've got stalls set up, so whether it's the Scottish Greens or our Republic, do consider joining our Republic. We are an organisation and we do like members. So you can pick up many a leaflet over there, scan a QR code, and that will get you straight in and you can join us. And I would really recommend that you do. So last words from me today is thank you very much, all of you, for turning out. This has probably been the biggest showing of a pro-Republic rally since I've been born, and I'm relatively young, I suppose. But yeah, thanks very much, everyone. Hope you have a safe trip home.